Good morning and a warm welcome to this week's edition of The Dialogue. My name is Simapolo. Welcome from a very busy week. It is time to look at the big events which made headlines within the week, and we put them into context. The panel is set, a lot to discuss. We'll be looking at the World Climate Action Summit in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and that is when world leaders, climate scientists, and very many participants converged to discuss and look at the ways to address the climate crisis in this world. But also we'll be looking at the new developments in this country in the line of human rights in Parliament and elsewhere, especially at a time when the opposition members of Parliament are pushing government to present action plans on how to address the human rights concerns. And especially in this particular week, the United States government also extended travel and visa restrictions on individuals, relatives of those individuals who have been implicated in human rights violations. We'll be also looking at other big stories, but let me introduce my panel. Dr. Jared Wansara, he is a public policy researcher, a resident panelist. Welcome to the show, and I'm glad to have you back again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apollo the Prince. I don't know what kingdom, but you have not answered that question for long.
I will.
Also, good morning, our esteemed viewers. For me, it's always good, and we thank God that we are here every Saturday to engage with you for 2 hours. And of course, you're welcome, my co-panelist this morning. Thank you.
Well, Gerard, I will answer that question at an appropriate time, but you remember our colleague Richard Baguma told us how he is planning to form his own kingdom, targeting the 60 million shillings stipend from government. Welcome, I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be joined by David Kuleba, and David Kuleba is a senior environmentalist working with the National Association of Professional Environmentalists, NAPE. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you.
Speak to our viewers.
Dear viewers, we're happy to have you here. And thank you, Apollo, for inviting us to come and discuss these very pertinent issues. You know, life begins with environmental conservation. And what the delegates are doing in Dubai certainly is to conserve the environment. Happy to be here and looking forward to sharing with you viewers.
Thank you. Thank you, David Kuleba and Dr. Jared Wansara. We'll be joined by Becca Baterule, and Becca Baterule is the senior journalist working with Uganda Radio Network. And of course, we'll be looking forward to your comments and observations using our regular platform. Send in your comments and observations on the topics we are going to discuss this morning. And briefly from you, Gerard, before we delve deep into these topics, how was your week?
My week was okay, largely, but on a negative note, the issue of road crashes has become a serious matter once again this period of the year. We had a nasty accident. I don't call it accident these days. These are road crashes, actually. Because in modern road safety, there is what they call the systems approach to prevention of road crashes. And you have to put a human being at the center. That most of these problems happen because of we, the humans. These are issues to do with behavior, that is speed, drinking under influence, driving under influence, and of course, reckless driving without caring about who else is using the road. Of course, the other area where you put emphasis is the vehicle. Are they inspected? Is it in a good condition? Is it? And then the other is the infrastructure. Then we don't have the talking roads like in other countries where you see big signs showing here, these barriers in the middle that the person coming from the other side cannot go on a head-on collision with the person going in the opposite direction. All this we are still lacking in this country. But it's really disheartening to see so many people dying in different parts of the country. For me, I really request Ugandans, please, let's be careful on our roads. Let's mind about others. Let's mind about ourselves, because if you look at the money going into post-crash care, that people are broken. I saw the director of Mulago Hospital saying that every day they are receiving 70 border victims in Mulago Hospital. So the resources that are supposed to treat people with malaria, people with other ailments, end up every day being diverted to victims of road crashes. So please, Ugandans, let's work together to solve this problem.
That is very important. Well, David, is there any big story that caught your attention this week?
Yeah, thank you, Apollo. The rains have been too much. And like my colleague has said, when you go to these other suburbs, the construction goes on. The roads, those feeder roads, are not there at all. When it rains, the visibility is lost. You have nowhere to go. But the one thing which I experienced this week was when I was trying to renew my driving license. I got my license in 1994, and at that time we were being given 2 classes, A and DL. When I went to renew my permit, I said this time let me put 5 years. I paid for 5 years. But when I got to the station where I was supposed to get my permit, I was told I got to the license, the class when I was not yet 25 years. That was very many years ago, and I was wondering if the law works restricted. And then I asked them, what's wrong with my permit? Have you cancelled? Is it not perfect? You are the one who gave me the permit. So eventually I had to pay for all the classes and did the retesting. So you can imagine.
They are applying the law in retrospect.
Yes. I got this class many years ago, and I've been renewing the permit. My permit is valid and it's very authentic, but I was surprised yesterday to be subjected to retesting at the age of, after 30 years of being on the road.
A sad story you have had this week, David, and Becca Baterule, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you back again. Speak to our viewers and possibly tell us what made your week.
Thank you very much. As usual, it's always a pleasure to be here. I greet you, people of the road. How are you doing? I know there are so many things that can annoy in this country. I think the blood pressures, actually the other day I saw a report that Ugandans are increasingly dying of what they call non-communicable diseases. Disease of the heart, diabetes, all those things related there. Because some of the reasons why we are in the state in which we are, we die of those things now because of the state of our affairs in the country. There are so many things that bring heart attacks in this country now, things that bring heart problems. And actually, I've had 2 similar stories with my friends. One who he got his driving license in 97. So he was also subjected to a new test that he had got his permit, when he was underage. 2 of them, and they were subjected to a retest. And one of them actually was denied the driving license. So I think people at UD, you do what? So at UDL?
UDS.
UDS. It's one of the few properly managed things in these countries, in this country. The other where there is some sense of proper management is at the passport office. Because when I got my first passport, it was the struggle for the fittest. If you are not fit or you are not paid somebody, you would not get a passport. But now there are processes. You wait 30 minutes, 1 hour, you are out. At that place where they issue passport, I mean driving license, if you are renewing, it can take you less than 15 minutes. So it is one of the very few places in this country that are properly run. So I think some of those glitches, they should look through them, because then they taint a rather good picture they had. But I also want to say one thing. And every time I go to police stations, I find borders. You find 2,000, 5,000 at each of the police stations around the country. I don't know why are they taking these things. Why are you police taking these borders? You know, you go at a police station and you find 3,000 borders. That is 3,000 livelihoods they are detaining.
Somebody told me he's in the border industry, and actually border rider told me that there is a specific time of the day when the Wandega police station has to mount a serious crackdown on borders. It's regular, so it's like now it's a practice.
And they keep them at their police station to do what? You find, I asked one police officer at Katwe, but why do you keep these things here? Say, the owners don't come for them. So why do you take them?
No, the issue is you must pay some money to secure.
It is not simply paying some money to secure it, because someone would rather go and get a new border at 5 million than go to police to pick the old one they are taking. So I think it is a serious issue that police really should look about. Maybe they are working with these people who sell borders, that you conscript what is in the market so that people come back and buy. Otherwise, what is the explanation for you having 3,000 borders at one day at Katwe, at Ginger Road, at everywhere across the country? I think police people and the Minister of Works, please think through this thing. We are struggling to live. We are struggling to feed our people at home. When you take away border, you've taken away not only the livelihood of one person, but because Uganda is a dependent country, it's a young country, therefore it means there are a few people who are working, and the rest of the population is depending on those. So when you take away one border, you are denying a family of 8 people livelihood.
Thank you so much. Those are serious concerns. And the issue about the passport and driving licenses, those are really important documents. Something must be done to make the processes really effective and reliable. Gentlemen, to me, the concern and my attention was drawn to the tail alerts that were issued within this week. Security issued tail alerts. I don't know, Dr. Jedad, if now we Ugandans have somehow gotten to learn to live, I mean, within that environment of terror. Because they were issued, and actually one terror suspect, I'm told, okay, it was reported he was arrested in Jinja. 2 bomb blasts went off, and I don't know if we are now learning to live within this environment of terror.
I think I will tackle it from the update first that we saw from the UPDF about the progress of the Operation Shuja. And of course they highlight a number of advances they have made, progress in terms of fighting the ADF in the Congo, but also they say they were aware that once they attack the hideouts, then the enemy probably would penetrate and create more cells internally. And so for me, if the intelligence takes the proactive approach of identifying the risks and then moving in to diffuse the situation before we lose lives, I think that is a plus to the security. But you also asked that, have Ugandans learned now to live with the terrorism, threats of terrorism? It has not been new. You remember from the bombing of the embassies in Mombasa,
1999,
the bombs in Kampala here in the late 90s and early 2000s. We saw bombs here just recently. So Uganda is prone to that challenge of terrorism, and you know that we are also active in different war theaters where terrorism is a big factor, like in Somalia, and so the enemy can choose to come and say, let's go and do something in the country. But whether we are prepared, I'm telling you, if the terrorists meant to kill the ordinary person, there are so many open places.
No, but
where I see anyone can walk in anytime and do whatever they want.
But lately, and I will ask Batet to make a comment as we switch to our main topics for discussion. The commander-in-chief gives periodic updates. I think it is regular now. I mean, every week he posts and issues statements of success in the DRC as our army is actively hunting and demolishing the enemy, and that is why the infiltrators are coming back. And looking at the incidents, recent incidents, the bombs at Miracle Center here in Kampala, Natete, Bunamwaya, and everywhere, those were somehow managed. There were attacks, but we are managed. They're more like success stories. I don't know what you make of that.
Well, I will not discuss the specifics because some of them really can be challenged. But I will not go into the specifics. But then the reality is that where we sit, there is a serious problem of terrorism.
True.
The ADF has been active in the Congo. It is true. And it is true that since the UPDF entered there, we have had many clashes, including the recent one on Lake Albert, where Njovu was arrested, and then others were killed. You all saw the bodies, and Njovu is here in the courts of law. Only that I'm wondering, because I see civilians here being tried in the court martial. Then I see the ADF who was found
in
fighting
civil courts.
Yes, who was in war theater engaging UPDF in the civilian courts of law. For me, that is where the concern is. But whether we have a threat of terrorism, we do.
Really? And
in fact, you have seen the intelligence organs sometimes acting on a tip-off and raiding places. Some, they have raided the genuine ones. In other places, they have been out of misinformation. Like where some sheikhs are, you saw the scandal in Kawempe, where the students are on training and then they were really beaten terribly based on false information. So we have such cases.
Have serious cases.
Yes. But also the last one, the president's update. One of those areas where we are putting a lot of money is security and then classified expenditure. You saw even in the supplementary budget, about 280-something billion is going to classified expenditure. So if we are putting that amount of money, then I think we would need accountability. So part of what the president is, I think, is doing is saying, okay, we are spending, but we are not spending in vain.
Okay. Becca, but what do you make of the serious tail alerts that were issued this week and the periodic updates from His Excellency the President, which show that possibly we are at the top of our game? I mean, security agencies are top of the game.
I have read a lot about terrorism, and particularly in Uganda and also elsewhere. In Uganda, there are people who have written that material. The material is present. There are 3 people who have written books. There is one called Dr. Kasule Joseph, another Nyahya Seremba, another one, she's a white woman called Ellen Epstein. All of them writing about terrorism and the ADF. 80% of what you hear about ADF is fiction created by government.
Fiction?
Yes. These are material present. There is a book by Ellen Epstein called America, Uganda and the War on Terror, Another Fine Mess. There's a book available. She worked in the Great Lakes for 20 years. Then Yahya writes about creation, the construction of American troops in Uganda. All these ones detail the issue of ADF, and they tell you that 80% of what you hear about them is fiction. Problem is that we tend to believe when the government says, we believe them without...
If it is fiction, like you say, you allege, you claim, what about these suspects who are apprehended and actually in courts of law, before the cameras, and they are alive, and they can speak?
Do you know, have you ever spoken to them?
Me, no.
You're a journalist.
Me, no.
Has your station never spoken to them? You know, when they arrested the killers of Kawesa, some of them, like Yasinians, were already, they arrested them for killing Katumba when they were already in prison. By the time Kawesa was killed, they had been in prison for another murder, alleged murder. When they killed, they say Kamoga, before he was acquitted, had killed Bahiga.
Sheikh
Bahiga, yes. But he was also arrested for killing Hassan Kiria. When Kiria was in one of the charges when he was being tried at the High Court, International Crimes Division, he was also charged for killing Kiria, who was killed when he was in prison. So, tell me, from 2012, when the first killing of a sheikh called Abdul Karim Sentam happened, tell me one Ugandan who has ever been convicted of terrorism? One. The only people who have been convicted of terrorism, because if government does that, it means that it has every information, because if you can go and raid the house in Bonamwaya.
Jamiru Mukuru, the leader of the ADF, is on trial.
He's been in trial since 2015. Why are they not prosecuting the case?
So how comes you call it fiction? This whole
because
thing
you
is
see,
fiction.
some of them, the reason why you don't see successful prosecution is because some of those things are actually a creation of the state. And I'm telling you things that are verifiable, that you can go, and I've told you the books. the one of Yahya is actually as recent as 2023. Uganda and the construction of Islamic truths in Uganda. It has a very big chapter on NDF. So in 1998, people who are in charge of bombs, who are the people in Sima who are in charge of overseeing that operation against the bombs that were being thrown, ended up becoming the most, the richest UPDF people. You've heard of a man who bought in Nakasero, Constitutional Square, called Kanomjenya, I don't know what. He was the one in charge of finance. By the time we finished that operation, he was one of the wealthiest Ugandans. So I am telling you, before you take some of these things, and I am not in any way trying to say that actually these are not real things, but some of them, because we are, when it comes to security, governments across the country did one thing. They tried to take away the population away. They determined they ring-fence security to be their part. When you question them, they say, no, you can't go there. But most of the things we hear about them, but because you ask yourself, say for example, that bomb that went off at the church. The giants were there at hand to capture it. So some of these things, and for us, unfortunately for us, we don't question some of these things. You look at a choreographed thing. Kayanja is there. Can you imagine there is a bomb scare at a church and service going on normally? This is it is not. Apple, don't go away from there. Let me ask you. They tell you there is a bomb in this building. Can you continue with this program?
No, really.
And there is a bomb. The time is ticking. A bomb that is capable of finishing. And the pastor is on the podium as if nothing is happening, and the giants are there waiting for it to explode. Where does it happen on earth? The first thing they do when there is a bomb scare is to evacuate the place. But I'm seeing the pastor, they tell you they don't want to kusasamaza the people. But you see, you look at them and say, okay.
But
so I think there is so much that we don't understand in these things than actually we understand. So when you the security people, you forgive me, but you leave so many rooms. You remember, let me give the last thing. You remember when they arrested Chagulanyi in Gulu, in Arua?
Yeah.
And they paraded guns. What happened? What happened to those guns?
All right.
Remember when they paraded
Dr.
Numbers,
Gerard Were
Maiga,
Wanzala
and
had
Segona, that
reservations
they wanted
on
to
that
overthrow the
topic.
government. What happened to that case? So some of these things when we talk about, but the spokesperson of the APDF, then they will tell us, these people, we even paraded people they were working with the Dewa Yekera. So some of these things really, with hindsight,
Yep.
we should take them with a pinch of salt. Not that the real threats are not there. No, I am not saying that.
Yes. Thank you so much.
What I was going to conclude with
You-
is that what I see from his
What you had reserved now
he
you have.
recognizes that there are challenges of terrorism.
Yeah, true.
But he also points out the fact that sometimes, many times, we mix security with the politics
Yep.
and the propaganda and then money making,
Oh, yeah.
which discredits the process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gerard Were Wanzala. Thank you so much, Bate Rule. The message is terrorism is real, and if any terror alert is issued, we must also be vigilant and bid and bid the advice and the well from the security experts. Thank you so much, viewers. Let's go straight to what was happening in United Arab Emirates, and we are talking about the World Climate Change Conference in Dubai. Uganda sent a delegation of 600 individuals who attended the conference, yes, and it was about addressing the climate crisis. I was looking at the targets or the objectives for this particular conference. One of them, limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, helping vulnerable communities to adapt to the effects of climate change, and thirdly, achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Good that we have an expert in the studios. He will kick off our discussion this morning, and basically we are taking stock of the efforts our government and all stakeholders, including ourselves, are actually doing in mitigating the effects of climate change. David Kuleba, please tell us what you think about what was going on in Dubai, relating to what actually this government and we ourselves are doing in this country to mitigate the effects of climate change.
Thank you very much, Apollo, and to our viewers. A delegation of, like you said, 600 from Uganda went, but the leads were, the people that were leading included our Prime Minister,
Yep.
our Minister of Environment, Chep Torres, but he's also Honorable Anya Beatrice. When you look at these conferences and what they intend to, when you're talking about reducing emissions, when you're talking about reducing emissions, emissions are reduced from the source of production. Where are the sources of emissions, for example? If you look at our country, it is not highly industrialized, but look at those industrialized countries, and that's where most of these emissions come from. Have they committed to reduce emissions? The 600 people, if you look at per individual carbon dioxide generation, if you calculate how much they emitted in aviation emission, how much is that? And you're talking about reducing emissions. The intentions of, for example, our countries could be very good, but the problem now comes, they just go there to participate in these meetings for the sake of it. Because at the end of it all, there is no serious outcome that comes out of it. Let me give you an example. If you look at carbon dioxide sequestration, it is done by some of these natural trees and natural species. But look at the rate at which our natural forests are being destroyed. Go to Bugoma, 21 square miles of the forest being destroyed to plant sugarcane. What does that mean? If you look at the wetlands, the rate at which they are going, this is where a lot of carbon dioxide is sunk. You look at the issues of energy. You're talking about reducing emissions, but the rate at which forests are being disseminated just to produce firewood is very high. Look at we all have electricity in our respective homes. who can afford to cook using electricity? How much is a unit of electricity? If you are talking about reducing emissions, if you cannot tackle the underlying causes of climate change, and you just go to take planes and probably get taxpayers' money in the form of allowances, you're there so many days, talking really no good substance. At the end of it all, it comes back to us. Because if you're talking about reducing emissions, you're talking about renewable energy. But how many people can afford that? Do we have subsidies? Do we have where are the efforts of communities probably doing boundary planting in their respective areas? Where are the incentives for people with forests to protect them so that now the amount of carbon dioxide being generated is absorbed? Look at the motorcycles that the gentleman Bate here talked about on the street. How much emissions they produce in a day? You're talking about, I think, 1 million motorcycles. If you ever made a stopover around one day when the traffic lights have blocked, you would see that motorcycles are like grasshoppers, but all of those are burning fossil fuels. If you look at the Paris Agreement that talks about reducing the use of fossil fuels, how many motorcycles and all the cars of 1987 are still on the road, emitting a lot of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and lead, and of course they are unregulated. Yet a lot of money is taxed from those vehicles, but the money is never plowed back. If you went to URA, how much money goes back to environment from of environmental tax? So all I can say about this, it would be a very good initiative if it could come back and get customized. The problem is these treaties are reached at, some agreements are reached. If you look at national determined indices for this country, if you look at our commitments as a country on issues of energy, to what extent are we ensuring that we now at least make a contribution towards reducing emissions? Where are the efforts? Where are the efforts in terms of planting trees? Where are the efforts in terms of getting clean energy? Where are the efforts in terms of giving subsidies so that now people can afford clean energy? So I think, to me, these meetings are just done for formality, and at the end of it all, I don't see any serious business that comes out of it.
Thank you. But before I cross over to Dr. Gerard Wanzara, coincidentally, as the talks were going on in Dubai, here, Kampala and the countryside was flooding. From you, the expert, are the two connected? I mean, climate change and the floods we are seeing here. I think we had also 2 incidents of landslides, one in Chisolo and one in eastern Uganda. Are the two connected? Please.
Absolutely, yes. Yes. Look at those mountains, usually they have trees. The forest ecosystem, you'll find that there are very different species of trees that do exist on a certain landscape. And what happens is that there are roots that cross-crease within this certain setting. When you cut a tree, those roots have to die. So in the process of water percolating, it goes through, as it rots, it goes through some of those roots. And eventually you get like mudslide or instability of the entire ecosystem. So when you talk about floods, yes, floods are as a result of climate change, extreme weather conditions. And it is evident when you look at the rate at which we are decimating forests. You go to Karangara and see what happened with oil palm. You cut trees and plant grass. You go to eastern Uganda and see the extent to which ecosystem was destroyed, including the biodiversity that lived in that very ecosystem. And look at the sugarcane that was put there. So the climate change and the floods are exactly linked.
Okay. Finally, from you, are you saying, from your submissions, are you implying that government back home is not doing anything in mitigating the effects of climate change?
I don't think it is not doing enough, because I have ever talked to National Environmental Management Authority. They are given salaries, they are never given money to do work. If you look at the wetlands that we have around here, they don't have the boundaries. That is the first thing. You cannot have a wetland that does not have a boundary, because you can never distinguish between private-owned land or the land that belongs to people and the land that is supposed to be held in trust for the people or with government. Now, if you are not able to market some of these boundaries and have the capacity to even protect and a bit sensitize and tell them the importance. Not that sometimes even they don't know, but even then, you have had people have sold land in the vice of trying to also survive. Some people are encroaching wetlands not because they want, but the so-called middle class people and very cheap people have bought them off, either willingly or forcefully, because conditions here force you to either sell or find a way of surviving. You talked about we are discussing here about the terror alerts. Some people are not even bothered. The motorcycle has been grabbed, the kid has been sent away from school, then they have nothing to eat at home, rent is on this person's neck, then the dad is sick, the kid has flu, and you're talking about terror alerts. He's as good as dead. So the cost of living is too high that even some people even don't even mind. Those border people in markets, they don't even sometimes even think about that. So I think the issue of encroachment on those wetlands, in as long as you don't have a clear demarcation of where the wetlands are meant to be protected, start and end, then it becomes a challenge, but also clear definition of what is a wetland, either seasonal or permanently logged. So are people aware of all that? So the government is not doing enough.
I recently had the executive director for NEMA informing Parliament that almost 80%, 70-80% of wetlands in Uganda are non-gazetted. So nobody knows even where the boundaries are. Dr. Jared Wera-Ansara, hearing from what David said, that the 600 delegation that went to Dubai and the talks are just a formality, and again saying that NEMA, the body charged with protecting and preserving the environment in this country, the officials are just in office receiving salary without facilitation to do the work. What do you make of the talks in Dubai?
Thank you very much. I will not even call them the talks, because usually talks come with, of course, serious agreements, commitments, timelines, and of course, maybe they may come up with that. But in terms of what is happening there to be felt, those decisions to be felt here, it will not be really much visible. You know, climate change is a serious matter.
Yeah, true.
But it is also a very controversial matter. If you go, for instance, to the US right now, Trump believes they are stepping on a lot of oil as Americans, instead of exploiting it, and then they sell it and they stop over-dependence on Saudi Arabia. They are busy preaching clean energy. That's how he's criticizing. So if there is a change of policy, say in Washington, like last time we saw, Obama was so much on climate change. When Trump came, he pulled out of the climate conference. And then Biden comes, goes back. So even globally, there is a problem. And yet, those global powers that emit a lot, they drive what happens in the developing countries. Right now, there seems to be a commitment from the West. If I look at the conference that Kenya organized on climate change, which is basically focusing on attracting money for carbon trading, that Africa should plant trees and then we receive money in exchange for absorbing the extra carbon dioxide. But again, locally, there is a serious debate that Africa is still poor. Africa has natural resources. These natural resources, like oil, like, you know, coal, like others, are needed externally. So the question also is that, will Africa grow by planting only trees, or Africa needs to exploit
So it's a controversial
like the oil that we have. Now, when it comes to policy, it becomes a very complicated matter that a government at the end of the day must balance between, say, exploiting like our sector, the oil sector, which has become very problematic now because we feel we should have a small refinery, we should sell crude through the pipeline. We have within Uganda activists who go to fight the oil,
the ECOP.
The ECOP. And then of course we also know there are human rights issues in the compensation of people displaced from their land. But me, instead of dwelling on the conference in the UAE, let me look at our country. Do they recognize that there is climate change?
True.
Yes, they do. Have they created some institutions that can help to combat this? Yes, they are there. Are these institutions fully functional? No, many of them are incapacitated, like he talked about. How many sectors are relevant to the issue of climate change? I look at energy. When you sign an executive order telling people that they shouldn't use charcoal, and then a sack of charcoal shoots in price, and yet we are running a Sigiri economy that in the evening when you pass on the street, you don't see anyone using gas, but everyone is using charcoal to make chapati, Rolex, to fry some chips, and then people buy and go eat. So what alternative? I looked at our colleagues, the Kenyans, for example. Tanzania has become a major gas producer in our region.
I think we even signed an agreement for Tanzania to give us gas.
But I've not yet seen it really practical, because I have seen in Kenya it is practical. The Kenyans decided to change the refinery in Mombasa to be a storage for liquefied gas. And then they have built a pipeline from Tanzania to Mombasa. So they have very cheap gas, and actually a 10 kilogram cylinder of gas in Kenya is buying 30,000 Uganda shillings. Today, me when I go to buy gas, the 12 kilogram, I'm paying 111,000. The price is so huge. So we had here Ministry of Energy buying some cylinders. They told us 2 million cylinders, but we saw very few. There are about maybe 200,000 that were given to a few families around. But those people that they gave cannot afford even buying a 1 liter gas to fill in that thing. So if you are burning charcoal, what alternative? Because everyone is using wood for firewood. So in terms of climate change adaptation, it is zero when it comes to energy. If you go people who are access to hydropower, we were told that when we build a number of power dams, the average cost of power will go down. It has never gone down to date. Even people now want to break their Yaka things, saying maybe they're cheating them. So then we have other areas like agriculture. There is a first grant we got on climate smart agriculture. I don't know whether it came without knowledge of people in agriculture itself.
No, I think there is, even this week, a supplementary was passed in Parliament.
I will come to that.
For climate smart
agriculture. But when
agriculture.
that first money came, I can assure you IGG Betkamia has a list of them who later pleaded guilty for stealing that money, and they pledged to refund it to the treasury. It's in the billions. They have never brought it back. So that money just disappeared. When I go to the villages, there are no extension services for agriculture. Local governments are broke. They recruit agriculture extension officers, then they go and stay in town. If it's for Namisindwa or Manafa, they stay in Mbale town, in the bars waiting for salary. So there's nothing going on in terms of extension services. So how are people going to adapt? Or when we talk about climate smart agriculture, are we just basing on the terminologies? Or because when we were young, extension officers used to stay at the sub-county.
Yeah, true.
And they have a house there. They go and inspect.
They would have facilities to transport them around villages.
I have seen the government has put money in the supplementary in farmers training something institute. But we used to have FDI, farm FDI at every district, a farm district, district farm institute, Mbale, Tororo, with a structure. Farmers used to be collected from the villages to be trained, and then they go and implement. Then there's follow-up services. This is not existing. When we give to these institutions, we are giving money, they stay in Kampala in workshops, and then people on the ground who are farming don't get anything. So agriculture, I see people bragging, hey, Uganda is a food basket. Government statistics or World Food Program statistics are showing that Uganda is food insecure. In Karamoja, we lose over 600 people every year because of hunger and starvation. So even as a country, we have not built that capacity. Now, there are some areas also like health. Like now we are in El Nino season.
Yep.
The focus also would be looking at what are the likely health implications of what is happening. Because El Nino, although occurs after some time, but it has been, its effect has been worsened by climate change. If you look at Mombasa, has never flooded the way it is flooding right now because of the rise in the seas and of course the melting of the oceans.
In the polar,
yes.
The polar ice.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, there are a number of, we need preparedness. Actually, for me, instead of going to spend a lot of time discussing, cutting emissions, what Uganda is emitting 0.000 something. For me, my concern should be adaptation. If we pass the sugar bill and we say we need a certain number of sugar factories, here, 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 and here, and then we don't establish the sugar board, okay, to monitor. Then we leave others come and create. And then we are cutting forests everywhere in the country to plant sugar cane. What are the implications of the environment and food security?
Good.
People don't have food. These are real challenges.
Real challenges, and they really require serious interventions. We are
Cutting
talking
sugar cane to feed the Waragi industry, because most of this sugar is going to Waragi makers.
All right, viewers, that is it. We're still looking at the efforts that have been put in place to mitigate effects of climate change in this country. In relation to the conference that is still ongoing in United Arab Emirates, where Uganda sent a delegation of 600 individuals to represent us, to source for those funding towards mitigating the effects and all that. And of course learn about the strategies. But what are we doing here? Looking at the floods in this country, the landslides, the rate at which forests are being decimated, the wetlands are being encroached on, you really understand that there is a serious problem. But let's go for a short break. When we return, the dialogue will also be looking at that particular issue, but again, we'll also look at the human rights issue in this country after, of course, the U.S. extended visa restrictions on individuals that are implicated in human rights abuses in this country. We go for a break. We'll return after a short while. Don't go away. Welcome from the break. This is The Big Show, a dialogue. My name is Simapolo, and in the studios, Dr. Jedad Wanzara, a public policy researcher, David Kureba, a senior environmentalist working with the National Association of Professional Environmentalists. But we also have Becca Baterule, a senior journalist working with Uganda Radio Network, taking stock of the efforts and steps being taken by government and all stakeholders in this country towards mitigating the effects of climate change, especially at a time when Uganda's delegation is still in the United Arab Emirates at the Climate Change Conference, COP28. But of course, we also look at the human rights issue as the opposition in this country still continue to press government to present concrete action being taken to address human rights concerns. Well, Becca Bate, you'll tell us what you think, but before you do that, let me make this announcement to our dear viewers of Salt Television. The engineers will be doing an upgrade to the system, and this will be between midnight and 2 a.m. And this is aimed at making some maintenance and new installations in order to serve you better. So Salt TV will be off for those 2 hours, but it is for the good of the station and for the good of our service to you. Please be part of this discussion. Send your comments and observations on this particular issue. Climate change is real, and the crisis is looming. Looking at the floods, the mudslides and landslides happening, actually now becoming more frequent in this country, and hearing David Kureba saying that all these conferences and talks are just a formality. Well, it is his opinion, but of course, I think it is time to assess and make an evaluation on the efforts being taken at this one particular point in time. Becca Batere, what do you make of what is going on in terms of mitigating climate change?
First of all, without a doubt, we are experiencing the impact of climate change in Uganda firsthand. We have irregular rains. You can never tell when they are to come. Even now, and they almost refuse to come. It has come when just in the last week of the month. It wasn't as brilliant as it used to be. You know, the rains are irregular. The rainy season, the sunny season are all irregular. You can't tell that it will be raining this time. You can't tell it will be shining this time. We are now in the middle of.
The weather has become more unpredictable.
Yes, we are almost in the middle of December, but the rains are still as intense as they used to, as of those of November. So, without a doubt, these are present issues we are grappling with. But there is a disconnect between what is happening, between the words of our leaders and their actions. His Excellency, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the president of this country, Tibuhabra, he keeps on talking about climate and his intention to protect climate.
The environment.
The environment. I think every year we lose about 90,000 hectares of forest. But how many do we plant? We have lost millions of hectares of forest in the period of Yoweri Museveni than any other presidents before. President Museveni, I think he cannot spend a month when he has not gone to his country home in Rwakitora. On Masaka Road, in Ruela, there is, instead of the papyrus used to have there is mchere, there is rice. There is rice, there is then mining of sand from that area. There is a reason why God created these things. They were not for fun. You know, there is nothing that God created. Some of the things that God created, we haven't known why He created them. But there is a reason for that. Now, where we used to have rice, where we used to have papyrus, for a reason, now we have rice. And the president passes there every day. Every month, the swamps. You find factories. You go alongside this Bombo Road. In swamps, there are factories. Namave was cleared for factories. And you know, sometimes he says one thing and the exact opposite happens. Where there was a forest, okay, they will say those who are not natural trees, those they will say so many things. But someone say we are going to put an industrial thing. You find their warehouses. In Namavi, half of Namavi is not production. Their warehouses. You know, containing things that can be kept elsewhere. He's been talking about Bugoma. They want to clear it for sugarcane. Our president had given away Mavira for sugarcane. Not that it is not now being used for other purposes, because the forest is alongside the road. But when you enter inside, it is an empty shell. The trees have been felled for something else. It is likely, it's highly unlikely that a poor person can build in a swamp. Because you first have to fill the amount of money you employ in feeding the swamp is capable of buying your plot of land elsewhere. So it is not poor people who are filling up the swamps.
Who are encroaching on the wetlands.
No, it is the people with money. I was with a friend the other week and we were passing through Chanja. You will clearly see that these used to be waterways, but they are flats. When you go to Chiwatule there, near Chiwatule Recreation Center, houses, big houses, down their streams. Down there they have constructed them in such a way that the downer floor, they leave like a stretch for the stream to pass. So you ask yourself, what kind of a rich man is this one? So in all places, because they want to have the in Sura Chiwatula, Nange Sura Chiwatula staying in Tinda. So you find them investing in destroying the amount of money and I ask myself, like I was asking myself yesterday where I was, there is a problem in Uganda Muslim Supreme Council where they are about to auction the properties of including the National Mosque, and there is a rich man who bought land at 3-point-something billion. There are not so many people with billions in Uganda. There are very few. So I was saying that to make a billion, it's, even if you're a thief, you must be a bright thief, because you see, though, if you are not intelligent and you're a thief, you will be caught. So, but you find people who are investing 3 billion in buying property in Chiwatule who don't even own a kiosk. What is their job? They are commissioners in government. What is their salary structure? 2 million. So there is a connection between the state of affairs in Uganda, the people who are running, the corruption in Uganda, and the destruction of the environment. Because the resources that they stole from us, they steal from us. First they steal our resources, then they go and use it to destroy our environment. So if actually we deal with the people who are stealing our resources in government, we would have also solved the problem of environmental destruction. Because it is our money they steal, they go and build in wetlands, they go and construct in places that they shouldn't be constructing. So I think there is you find the president writing every day, leave the swamps, But it is his government. Most of these swamps, even if NEMA is telling you it is protected, I mean, they are not gazetted. Even if it is your own wetland, the law doesn't allow you to construct in that way, even if it is yours. So NEMA shouldn't be clever by half. So it is them, it is these wetlands, they are in charge of them, even if it is yours. Me, I know of a wetland, the person owns it, has a, and they are the people who actually, who issue land titles. Because the land title is issued by the government. So why do they issue land titles in wetlands? Don't they know that that is the wetland they are issuing a land title in? So I think for me, the destruction of the environment has everything to do with the people running the affairs of the state. Number two, a little bit away, I am a student of colonization. Part of this so-called COP28 and those things, they are colonial in nature. Because you'll find the USA and China, who are the biggest leaders in environment destruction, doing zero.
Yeah.
They're doing nothing to cut the emissions. Even as I speak to you, the other day, Obama, I mean this man, Biden, allowed the limited exploration of exploration, oil exploration in Alaska. For them, they still do that. Even if Biden will tell you that, no, we are for environment, they are allowing it. In Alaska recently, he gave licenses, for oil exploration. And the Republicans, they have no qualms about it. You see, all Americans are the same. Mostly they are evil. But the Democrats will throw a bomb at you laughing. The Republican will throw a bomb at you when he's very, with the annoyed face. But all of them do the same thing. So the Republicans for them, the good thing, they are more truthful than the Democrats. They don't shy away. They'll tell you, we'll give the licenses. So I think for me, countries like ours who are zero contributors to emissions, we shouldn't be even engaged in these things. Because you go in countries like India, we wake up one morning and there is fog all over, and no one can move. But they can sustain themselves when they are not working. China, the same thing. China has even capacity to, when it's very hot, to go and sprinkle the entire Kampala. Uganda, even if it is 100 Celsius hot, we can't do anything because we don't have the resources to do that. Me, I'm not with these so-called environmentalists who are living lying, by the way. They tell so many lies because you see, like, look at the ECOP. Me, I'm a supporter of ECOP and the exploration of our oil there. Because ultimately, you cannot adopt to the environment when you don't have the resources to do that. These Americans and the rich people of the G7, they have committed themselves to do, what do you call it, carbon credit, to pay us for so that we can absorb there. They have never paid. So they pollute, we pay the price, and we cannot even adopt to, because if we want, for example, to, doctor here talked about the use of gas. How many families can afford 112,000, 120
for the 12 kilogram,
for a 12 kilogram cylinder of gas? And that gas, you don't even use it alone. You have to have a cooker on which you use it. The cheapest one is 600,000. People, we had a debate here of whether we are middle income or not. And you know how much middle income is? $1,040. That is about 3 points per capita, per person. That is, and per year, that is about 3.8 million. 3.8 a year. And we are saying we are not there. It was a lie. The president lied that we are middle income. We are not. But we are talking about 3,800,000.
Okay.
So majority of Ugandans don't earn that money. Yeah. So how do you tell a person who cannot afford to feed themselves then to buy gas?
President Museveni has on several occasions come out strongly with even executive orders on protecting the environment. I don't know what you really. I remember him actually giving the whole press conference. On TV, address, national address on TV on environment.
Yes.
Instructing people to vacate, or they will be actually forced out of wetlands. All those who are conducting farming on riverbanks, you remember all that. There have been orders issued, but you wonder why they have not been implemented.
Because even the person who was issuing them was not serious about them.
Really?
Yes. It was just for public relations.
Maybe. Maybe it is the implementers.
No.
The
not
NEMA, the NFA, and all those who are not doing their work.
What has he done to them? Isn't he the one who appoints them?
Apple.
So let me tell you, Apple. For me, there was a time when in 2020, after March, our president would sit on television and say, tomorrow no boda coming to Kampala. No taxis going to carry people. All schools are going to remain closed. Even in Karamoja.
During the lockdown.
Which is almost an independent country from Uganda. There were no schools there. You get, even bodas there were not carrying people.
So why?
So it tells you
did they work that time?
No, because it tells you that actually if he was serious about these things, they would work. Because the president keeps on telling us, you see, sometimes if you are new in this country and you hear the president speak, you might think that is the leader of opposition. That is, he has not been in charge of this country for 40 years. He's also appealing. You saw him the other day walking because of corruption. But the same people who are corrupt in his government, they are the people seated next to him. So there is a disconnect between what the president says and what actually he does. And I don't want to agree with the thing, finally, that there are some people who are unwilling to implement the president's orders. When the president so wishes that his orders work, we have seen them work. The man said, taxis, no car is going to move. Imagine, he would address at 10. Agamba, today, taxis at 10, no more movement. Everyone stop. And actually, they would stop. Even in the deepest of places in Uganda, where there is no police officer, no taxi would move, no car would move. So I want to tell you that the president has the powers, absolute powers. If actually he was serious about them, and it would be even very easy. Because most of the people who are doing the destruction are either people who work for him or the people who issue the licenses, the land titles are people who work for him. So if he was serious about the environment and indeed he cared so much about it, he has all the instruments for him to use to crack.
So it is lack of the political will.
It isn't there.
Finally, from you, David, how do we get out of this with all the submissions you have made and the colleagues you have made, and what we know?
I think it is a very big problem. If you're talking about these wetlands, who are these people in the wetlands? That is the question now. And the people in the wetlands, can they get out? The government, the president has cancelled titles several times. I would say people having titles in wetlands, they should be cancelled. But how many times has the president cancelled verbally these titles and they are never cancelled? So I would suggest that the title should be cancelled. But also, in the recent country address by the president, when he talked about people who are in the wetlands should be evicted. But who are these people to be evicted? The small people. These people with these mud and water houses are the ones who are going to be evicted from the wetlands. Look at this road connecting from Musega up to Mpiji. It is going through a wetland. Look at all these flats, and look at this, and even the president made it very clear that for those people that are doing ecotourism and putting those post structures on the river banks and in wetlands, those ones are permitted. So these small people don't destroy wetland. A wetland is destroyed by people with money.
But I talked about similar striking a balance between the economics and environment conservation, that you also need the money to protect the economy, no, the environment, I mean. Did you get it?
I got it.
That even when you environmentalists are saying the ECOP project must stop, but then we need the money to preserve the environment.
But where is the money from ECOP? Look at the cost of constructing a 1,480 kilometers that will work for a short period of time. What will happen to decommissioning? You know, there are things that need some little bit of economics and environment economics. You have sunk all this money in a pipeline to run for 1,480 kilometers. This is a resource that is going to deplete. Look at that investment. How is that money going to be recovered for constructing a pipeline? If it is a factory, it can be changed into a warehouse. It can be changed into something else. But look at even the benefits. Who are the ultimate people to benefit from that money? All the employment, all the resources are being exported.
No, I think the oil money...
petroleum is not this fine product. It has grease, it has employment, it has all of those. You have taken them away. It has worked. If you take them away, what do you have?
No, we were told oil money will build the infrastructure.
Which infrastructure? Which infrastructure?
Okay.
Look at three sectors in this country that actually are lagging totally behind. Look at agriculture. It's in a mess. It has been taken over by private people. And if you look at the amount of agrochemicals that are being used, if you look at food security and food sovereignty, people no longer have seeds. What is going to happen? We are being neo-colonized. The seeds are being taken. Look at education. People are selling land, their own land, to take their kids to school, and they don't get returns on the investment. Look at health. I had parents in the hospital, my old parents. But what I went through, that's when I realized this country is still somewhere where a person cannot define.
There is what he talked about, the planting rice in wetlands. But again, there is what you call sustainable wetland utilization. Isn't it? Doesn't that somehow accommodate?
It doesn't.
What he talked about.
It doesn't. You must look at the wetland species with compatibility element. If you are talking about fish ponds, if you are talking about maybe probably sugarcane, if you are talking about those species that live in the environment just to filter and control the speed and allow water for the aquifering of the water table system. But you don't talk about, because look at rice. Rice can come with chemicals. There is biodiversity that lives in the water. We get much of the oxygen from the water generated by water. You talk about zooplanktons, phytoplanktons, you're talking about hormones, you're talking about tilapia and all these. And the wetlands, those are breeding areas of the different fishes in the marine ecosystem. You have done away with the breeding ground. So if you look
so we are literally killing our planet.
We are killing nature, we are killing ourselves. Actually, you don't kill nature. We are killing ourselves. Because nature can live without us, but we cannot live without nature.
Finally, from you, Dr. Gerard Wansara, what do you think will be, will be the consequences of our actions? We are really doing what we are doing.
From the expert perspective, he has actually talked about, I can say, the science of climate change. For me, I'm more concerned about impact in terms of the lives of the people. You have raised the issue of sustainable use of wetlands. We had the people from Butaleja, people from Chibuku, the former Bukedi, who were living in these wetlands and growing the traditional rice, our super. They were not using any chemical, nothing. Now, because of climate change, there was a directive that let them vacate. Meanwhile, the rich ones in Kampala are filling the wetlands with soil and constructing. So people were chased from the wetlands in Chibuku, those districts around Bugwere and Bunyoli. And then government said they were coming up with alternative sources of livelihood. And one of those areas were fish, like he's talking about, fish farming. Now, the way they did the intervention, I can say, was so bogus that you pick one rich person, either a politician or a technocrat, and you support him or her to build a pond. At the end of the day, the rich person, who actually is not even interested in agriculture, of course, it's like they take it casually, like leisure. They have some fish there, they expect subsidies from government, but the ordinary person who was evicted from wetlands is hungry. Actually, that action has caused a lot of poverty in the Bukedi sub-region. First, there's a reduction in rice, and then two, poverty. So these are the climate change.
So our decisions are also detrimental to
yes, we need
the
concrete actions. If we are expelling people, poor people, let me say poor people, because they were depending on that wetland for rice for centuries. All the water that comes from Mount Elgon flows down to Butaleja, and then that water would be utilized in the rice farming. Today, we chased them, like as you approach Mbale town, there is this dock area. They put the China-Uganda Industrial Park. Now, when it floods now, actually the water evades those factories. But the poor people were chased, they don't have meals, they don't have anything. So, these interventions of adaptation should be well thought of. And then those in areas like agriculture, because there's a serious issue with food security and climate change. We need to, the science of growing crops. We need the methods, and the population is increasing. So and then the other, of course, there is also a security dimension in the climate change. Karamoja, if we allow the desertification to come downwards and increase, of course you expect more people to live and come on the streets in Kampala, and then you spend more trying to carry them, you take them back, they come back, because the conditions are hostile.
Oh. I didn't hear you talk about the move to e-energy. In Uganda, it looks like we have taken steps. I don't know if they are slow or fast to go to, I have seen motorcycles that run on electricity, batteries. We have manufactured electric cars. We have a plant in Jinja. 1 minute or two, that's the move to
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You're talking about that move. But one question is, we are moving towards of all those, what is it that is manufactured from here? Two, if you look at the components that are required in making what we so-called clean energy, that's what we call it. It isn't clean. You're talking about copper, you're talking about batteries, you're talking about lead, and then the disposal of these batteries. It is a very big problem, and you're talking about acid.
But
where
now
do they
where
come
is the
from?
solution? Because is it clean energy?
Yes.
Clean energy, I think, is the immediate solution to this problem of climate change.
You know, there are things that are usually talked about without deeper understanding of what that means. For me, when I look at renewable energy in terms of, for example, you're talking about solar, look at all these solar panels. They last 25 years at maximum. When they get a problem, where are they exposed? Do we have a waste management plant here that can convert these panels into something else? If you are talking about the lead, where is it mined from? If you are talking about all the components that are meant to make a battery, for example, before you go to the wires and before you go into exposure, where do they come from? For me, all along, I think we have a cascade of dams on all these rivers, and very many of them hydropower. I still think hydropower is one of the best options that in the world one can have. Because you're talking about recycling of the same. You have one area of interruption, we are talking about marine ecosystem, but if you cage the fish species at a distance, then you have only water and a few species that are being crushed by the turbines, for example, and you have all of them. But the problem, you have seen wires running over people's homes, rural electrification. I've seen it happening, and I wonder how it works. The wires run over people's houses, and eventually they don't see anything. I've seen it several times. So I think it is very important for this country to look at the energy thing, hydroelectric power.
So hydroelectric power is the solution.
Because you are talking about
Can present solutions.
Yeah,
to
you're talking about
mitigation.
thermal. If you look at the kind of energy mix that we have in this country, we're using diesel in these big generators to produce the energy that you are using here. So where is the solution? It is going to be demand driven. This motorcycle person will need you to produce thermal power using the generator. It is the same emission that is in the direct transferred from the motorcycle to the generator that is producing
Government
energy.
is planning to install nuclear plants here, to move to nuclear energy, and I think also we have deposits of uranium. I think that's another power source. So I think the solutions are inside.
That is another area that I would not want to discuss now.
Thank you.
Because that is another disaster of its kind.
But Becca, finally on the issue of electricity, because if an executive order is issued for people to stop cutting trees when there is no solution or alternative in sight, we lack gas. Actually, I was informing you, the Ministry of Energy just 2 weeks ago, I think, signed an agreement with the government of Tanzania to import natural gas from Tanzania. So one solution there. What do you think now, how does that work? Because we have built a lot of power dams around this country, and actually I have had some leaders saying we have energy in excess. But then we can't use it.
You know, and by the way, it is true that when you read the Auditor General's reports, almost every year we have in the excess of 150 megawatts we don't use, but we pay for. Because the government of Uganda has guaranteed to pay the energy, all the energy that is produced, but we don't have capacity to use it. But even as who use electricity, you know, I keep on asking myself, how much is a unit of electricity?
It's around 700 or 800.
Because you see, when I buy your car at the beginning of the month,
there is a
say
subsidy.
20,000, they will give me 32.
There's a subsidy in the
32 units. When I buy it at the end of in the middle of the month or at the end of the month, they will give me 20 units. So it means that even them, they don't know, because there must be...
They have a specific bidding system.
No, but if there is a standard price of a unit, why must I buy power at the beginning of the month? You give me 32 units. Because for me, my interest is the power that finally ends up in my house. You get. Now, I pay 20,000 at the beginning of the month, you give me 32 units. I pay on the 27th, you give me 15 to 20 units. So how much am I buying? If I buy MTN airtime for 2,000, they will give me 2,000, irrespective of whether I bought it at night, whether in the middle of the night, whether in the morning.
So
But
you challenge that
now,
billing system?
yes, it is problematic, it's thuggery, you know. But now, if I pay 20,000, you know, I have a cooker that uses both gas and electricity. When I choose to use electricity, say the gas has run out, in a day I will use up the whole 32 units. Now, you are telling us electricity as
you have
an excess of I mean, as a replacement to fossils. Now, if I use more money, for example, to do, if I use, say, gas of 20,000, I mean, of 112,000, goes for 3 months. But I use 20,000 in 3 days. So it means in 3 days, how many days do I need to use up all the entire 120,000? So it means even the alternatives must be affordable. What I am trying to show, to point at, is that, say, if you have motorcycles that are
running on batteries,
on how much fuel, how much energy, electricity would they need to be charged, and how much money am I going to pay in electricity to charge my border? Vis-a-vis how much I would have paid if I was using fuel. Right. So even the alternatives, the point I was making is that as we speak now, actually more expensive than what they are trying to take us off. So there must be some incentives to take us away from what we've been using to an alternative.
Actually, that is the problem. I've noticed that electric cars are much more expensive.
Yes.
In buying and maintaining.
Yes.
Than
obviously,
this,
obviously.
Well,
and what happens because you know there are areas in this town where we don't have electricity. We don't have, the national grid, it doesn't reach. So what will happen to those places? Where do the borders there go? So some of these things,
there are challenges.
we have not. They use generators. Yes, which generators also use the energies you are trying to get people away from. So I think some of these things really, as the government looks at alternatives, if you are telling us that the alternative should be hydroelectricity, really make hydroelectricity affordable to the common person. But as we speak now, look at the connection rate. I think the last time I checked, we were at 21%. You know, the connection.
Yeah, the national.
The people who are on
grid.
the national grid. 21%. It's not half the country. So if you tell us that these are the alternatives you are providing, then make them, first of all, accessible in terms of those of us who have them physically, but are they accessible to us? Can we afford them? Number two, make them accessible that they are there. You go to places where there's no electricity. So these are really important issues to grab about. But I think we begin to look at first world problems instead of us focusing on third world problems, because some of these ones, for us to say now we are looking at electric cars, really, that might not be our immediate problem now. Because until you've set, if the USA, because there are areas, Germany has set itself 2030 as a total, even Norway.
Even China,
Yeah, they have said 2030 is just 5 years, 6 years away from now. As
to convert to
moving to clean energy away from fossils. No, they are not licensing any vehicles that are requiring fuel. If you set your target like that, what are you doing about it? What is it that you are doing in order for you to ensure that that target is met?
Okay. A lot of work to do, and many questions still lingering here and there on how we are addressing the issues of climate change. Thank you so much, our viewers. Please send in your messages and your observations on 0701 609906. You will see it on your screen. The producers will put it there, 0701 609906. Tell us what you think are the efforts by government. We are taking stock of the efforts by government and all stakeholders in mitigating the effects of climate change. What do you think we are doing to ensure that we are safe from those effects? But gentlemen, in the studios, we only have a few minutes. Talk about the human rights issue in this country. I talked about Parliament, but we have discussed it, I think, for more than 3 months. But now, at this point in time, the US this week issued another, the State Department of the US, they have expanded, they have extended These are restrictions on individuals in this country, to family members of individuals implicated in human rights abuses. And even this morning, the Commissioner of Prisons in Uganda also slapped sanctions, economic sanctions, relating to how LGBT community are being treated in prisons. I don't know what this pressure means to this country. There is a lot of pressure, I think, Dr. Jedel Wansala, on the issue of human rights, especially from the US.
Yeah, this elephant in the room has been around for a while. And of course, there's no question about the fact that Uganda has been put on a human rights watch list for a while. One of the reasons being the political rights, which we have documented ourselves in our laws. For instance, the rights to organize, the rights to, to life, the rights to, these are all documented. But over time, we have seen a lot of cases, the Uganda deteriorating. And yet if you go to the 10-point program of the NRM, which I believe the current members of NRM have forgotten.
They have never read.
One of the key issues was promotion of human rights and prevention of violation of human rights of any nature. Today, we have seen the emergence of the above. We don't know who is called above in this country, where someone cannot freely hold a political rally, someone cannot peacefully demonstrate under police protection unless you're a member of the NRM or you're a musician who is going to launch a song which praises the government, then you'll be given security to go and do it. So there are violations of political rights. Now, lately, we have seen, for instance, we are talking about the prisons. For me, I trust prisons was one of the few institutions that Uganda was left with that you could trust. But lately, they have become more vibrant in terms of talking, politics, threatening. I've seen the current spokesperson of the prisons lately. When there are processions of politicians, he's also talking about enforcement and so forth, which is outside their mandate. Then the other, we have seen increasing cases of where the courts issue production warrant to go and bring a prisoner to come maybe and ask for bail, and this person does not appear in court.
They are not respected.
But is known to be in the custody of the prisons. So these are the questions. The other questions, of course, is that there are reports of other security agencies in penetrating prisons and going to access prisoners and doing whatever. And we have seen cases of prisons authority bringing tortured victims in court with wounds,
which is
with
against the law.
Yes, exactly. And many times the prosecution has failed because the cases have been dismissed because the people have been presented in the court when they are tortured. So as a country, for me, I will not dismiss that these sanctions do not have impact. They do, because gradually, if you have leaders who are like, I call them pariah leaders who cannot mingle freely around the country.
You had the speaker, Honorable Right Honorable Anita Mongo, reiterate her earlier statement that as long as I have my visa to Bukede and Budiope, I am safe.
This is how I've been around. This is how Robert Mugabe's people used to speak. They used to say we can stay in Harare, Bulawayo, we don't care going anywhere. But at the end of the day, Zimbabwe sank.
Yeah.
So today we can say, okay, they prevent you from US, then you go to Rwanda for games, sports and games of MPs, you'll pocket your 2-point-something million per day. For 2 weeks you come back, you go and deceive people in the village, buy a few coffins here and there. But at the end of the day, your hands are tied. You are not a free leader.
So the sanctions will bite at one point.
At one point, they are going to bite. And I can assure you they are biting, because the first sanctions that included the generals, Kale Kaihura and others, many of them, their children were in Europe. They would go and buy apartments for them. But right now, it is very difficult. So, but for me, the most important thing is that we are laying this bed together, and if they prevent them from walking abroad, it is okay. Let us all stay here.
Okay.
But when it comes to
But
the last one, the issue of LGTB, I think that one, there is hypocrisy from the Western world. Because, well, we knew that this was not the biggest problem in Uganda, but when we passed the law, they raised the issues. We went back and revised the law, and the laws targeted, you know, the extreme perpetrators, those who do it with the children, those, you know, some laws that penalize, for instance,
promote.
certain individuals were scrapped off. So I think if that one is being used as a major human rights violation, that is wrong. Let's look at so many other rights that Ugandans are not getting.
Good. Becca Bate, will these sanctions really bite? Because even the individuals implicated, I think now even the 430-something members of parliament who passed the law have been also listed. Will they bite at one point in time? Because they have always been dismissed.
First of all, from where I'm standing, I really don't care about what the Americans have to tell us, because these sanctions come at a time. Americans are the most hypocritical people I've ever known in the world, in the history of the world. Now, yesterday, the Americans, 13 members of the UN Security Council voted for a ceasefire in Gaza. America vetoed it. The British abstained, because abstaining is not as bad. We are talking about, you'll tell me, you'll ask me why I'm going there. We are talking about 17,000 people killed in a space of 2 months. We are talking about the destruction of 60% of the homes of the people. We are talking about the denying of people of water, electricity, fuel, and what have you. We are talking about killing of 7,000 children. What is that? How do you describe that? Human rights violation, isn't it? Isn't that the term that they call that? Because in a country of 2.5 million people, when you kill 20,000, that is almost, for every 200 people, you have killed one person for every 200 people. Now the Americans, who are so intent about human rights, who are preaching human rights in Uganda, telling us that they are going to sanction our leaders because they have violated human rights. They are the people. Last week they provided 200 bombs that penetrate bunkers. So really, I have this week I've been reading a book by Noam Chomsky and Herman on constructing consent. There is a litany of how the Americans look the other side when their agents, when their client states are committing actually worse human rights violations. You know, the Americans, they are very good friends with people in UAE. They are very good friends with people in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, and all those Arab countries. They are very good friends with all of them.
Where there are harsher laws.
Where there are harsher laws on LGBT, they kill them by dropping them from, say, a higher building and drop them dead. You see? But they are very good friends. You have never heard them that they have sanctioned Saudi Arabia because of human rights violations. You have never heard of them that they have sanctioned, say, even in our neighborhood here in Rwanda. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, has filed report after report after report of human rights violations there. The British now are people who are seeking asylum in the UK. The first stop, they have to first bring them to Rwanda when their thing is being, their application for
asylum
is being processed. And even the US is very good friends with Rwanda. You get? They are very good friends with other countries in Africa that have worse human rights violations than Uganda. I am not even trying to say that actually there is no human rights violation in Uganda. Of course it is there. But I'm saying the person, they say when you are seeking equity, you come with clean hands.
Yeah, yeah.
The person who is trying to tell us about human rights violation, he's actually more tainted than those ones whom he's accusing of human rights violation. Because Museveni, with all his problems, he has never killed 15,000 people. you know, at least at a go like we are seeing American bombs and American money doing. So Americans really, and it is colonial for you to sit at your home and say that you see Ugandans, you should not pass a law that prohibits LGBT. How many times have we interfered in how America legislates? Let me tell you the last thing.
Last.
95% or even 98% of Ugandans approve of the bill that was passed.
Yeah, true.
So the Americans, whom are you speaking for? Because the majority,
almost 100% of legislators.
yes, pass the thing.
Passed.
And they are not legislating for the world. They are not like Americans who legislate for other countries. No, they are legislating for Ugandans. And Ugandans almost 100% are saying, this is what we want. So I think for me, do you want to tell me that actually sexual rights are the most important rights? Because in our laws, majority of our population is less than 18 years. You get. So, and when you are below 18 years, you don't enjoy sexual rights. You see. So, do you want to tell me that sexual rights, and there are others who even they are of age, but they don't have those rights. So, do you want to tell me that of all the rights that there exist,
that is what you call
the right to sex is the most important?
That is what you call hypocrisy.
No, it is actually, for lack of a better word, you can use that.
Our time is running out, and Musimenta Nelson said thank you so much for the show. I am sure the policy on environment in Uganda is bogus, and even the implementers are not serious. Thank you so much. That is your comment, Musimenta Nelson. Musinguzi Gerard said thank you so much. I liked the submission from Dr. Jared Wansara about the executive orders. Well, what did you say about executive orders?
Well, I questioned.
And others actually saying thank you. Well, we love it when you appreciate us, but time is running out, and I have to give 1 minute round through this, across the panel, so that they give us their last word. And I'm running out of time, I'm sorry. We have to leave this place. Dr. Jerry Wansara, your final comment.
Yeah, recently, it's not a story, just a brief one. I was in a road safety meeting with the Professional Drivers Association.
Make it quick.
And they say that when truck drivers cross to Rwanda, there is a speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour. But the moment they come and cross to Uganda, they increase.
They zoom.
Because they have a saying, those from Kenya and Tanzania, that Uganda hakuna sharia. In English, means that Uganda has no laws.
Oh.
So they are able to do anything.
That is why they even cross to drink walaji.
This was from a driver leader. They will go sleep on a highway somewhere the whole night drinking, and then speed very fast the morning and go and crash cars. So even in light of this environmental debate, I ask the government that if we have the laws, we have interventions, please let's implement them. Let's not be a laughing stock.
Thank you. David, your final comment?
My final comment, already I think some countries have committed some loss and damage fund in the UAE. I think when this money comes...
I have seen somewhere that even Uganda has secured some good money, 1.5 trillion from 4 farms to do green energy projects in Uganda.
Yeah, so
it's something that is coming.
Yes, but where is that money going to? How is that money going to benefit communities? You see, the government sued local communities, the 42 of them. They wanted to grab their land without doing proper, effective, and timely compensation. So if that money comes, consider these poor people. Don't evict them and take their property, because development should actually benefit them. Not benefiting the person.
This is for energy, green energy projects.
Correct.
Green energy projects.
Correct. But you're talking about the ECOP, all that is energy.
Oh.
Oil and gas is part of the energy.
Oh, yeah.
So if they are doing something of that kind, let them target communities, the vulnerable communities, the poor people.
Thank you. But your final comment?
I saw a video of the Right Honourable Prime Minister Robin Anabanya being interviewed by the BBC on the sidelines of the summit, environment summit, the climate summit in the UAE. And I said, okay, because they told us they sent us fishermen and fisherwomen. Really, we deserve better as a country. At least when it comes to that, we shouldn't export our fishermen and fisherwomen to the international world for them to see.
Viewers, thank you so much for your
we
time. Thank you so much for sticking with us. I have to, of course, tell you that, again, we'll have maintenance of Soul TV. The engineers will be doing some work, and that is between midnight and 2 a.m. this evening. So we may be off, but this is for the good of our service to you. Please, we regret the inconveniences. My name is Simapolo. Let's catch up next Saturday. The big show will be back at 10 on Saturday. Well, for God and my country, a very good week ahead.